Hey everyone, it's me Giovanni. I wanted to make a video about a certain theory that I found oh wait 3 weeks ago by Impulse Evan 37. Well, with him and some other FNAF theorists, some of their theories might be correct and might fit the lore of FNAF way more easier, but some of their other theories are a complete mess that it just ruins it for me. But the Fredbear's Family Diner solved mini theory, that is only 8 minutes and 37 seconds, involves a certain thing that actually, now that I realized it. So the Springlock suits were actually made during the 1980s, but did not last long during that time, even after Charlie's death, and then they were probably banned from being used ever again. And so the Springlock suits were made probably around 1982, and it's actually funny. Actually, why don't I just...
Let's get to work. You're selling UVA to Paul Marks.
Are you fucking kidding me? Just skip it already. I should have just...
Seems a bit more complicated than we thought it was. So in this video, we're going to be talking about everything that we don't know for sure about Fredbear's that actually makes it referred to as the Brazil ending. Or the thing about this that's interesting existed in the 90s pressure is all about a guy named Luca wearing a Springtrap suit for a death, eventually dies as it starts to realize he's inside a out and impale the occupant fatally. End quote. We also get some more insight on how the Springlock suits work, but what I want to focus on is this quote specifically, and even more specifically that first line. The Springlock suits were discontinued not long after they were created. We know from FNAF 3 that the Springlock suits were discontinued at some point between 1983 and 1985, as they were discontinued before the Missing Children incident, but after Fredbear shut down, which we know from the fact that Fredbear and Spring Bonnie are Springlock suits and still exist at Fredbear's during the Bite of 83. Now, the Springlock failure that shut down the Springlocks could have been the Bite of 83. Sure, Fredbear is in animatronic mode, but there's Springlocks in multiple areas of the suits, which Pressure tells us as well. Different parts of the suit can activate at different times, be that calling it a Springlock, possible that it was simply called a Springlock failure so that nobody would question exactly the possible Bite of 83, which was obviously in 1983. That means that they were discontinued around the mid-80s or so. The reason this is so important is because the Springlock suits didn't last that long. The suits were discontinued not long after being created, meaning they must have been created in the early 80s. But as we just discussed, Fredbear's Family Diner was open in the 1970s, so how can that be the case without the Springlock suits? Well, if we really think about it, nowhere does it say that the Springlock suits were the first ever mascots Fazbear Entertainment had. They were the first animatronics. We have Fredbear, who was designed much more like, he looks just like Glitchtrap, but not like the Springlocks existed, and Fredbear originally had the design of regular Fred created, and Fredbear's design was changed when it happened. Fredbear's Family Diner only had fabric costumes of Fredbear and Spring Bonnie for the...
Which fabric costumes, which are just, mascot costumes, or sort of like fursuits for, they're mascot costumes for restaurants, some sports, even with school sports like sports in general, or just for a family restaurant. And Fredbear's just so happens to be that. I mean, considering that the mascots they also... Okay.
First years it existed, and we know costumes like this did exist because of the Tales from the Pizza Box stories, the Mimic, and the series epilogues, as well as the ending Fredbear costumes like this when there's no from Fredbear's. The Fredbear cutout from the Brazil ending is of Fredbear when he had the design of Freddy, and it's labeled as being from the 70s, meaning that Fredbear in the 70s did have the design of Freddy before eventually being changed, and after Fredbear shut down, which we know from the fact that the spring locks could have been the bite of 83. Sure, Fredbear is in animatronic mode, but there's spring locks in multiple areas of the suits, which Pressure tells us 20 years ago.
Considering that Glitch Trap is supposed to be a sewn suit, and the Spring Bonnie design from the posters is exactly like Glitch Trap, then it's possible that Glitch Trap was supposedly the fabric mascot costume of Spring Bonnie, minus the fact that the colors are the color of the actual suit, minus the vest and bow tie, are like Spring Trap's color, where it's more like a saturated, faded, icky green color. Considering that Spring Bonnie is supposed to be a yellowish color. It's kind of ironic that Spring Bonnie in the poster has purple eyes similar to Glitch Trap. Meanwhile, the Spring Bonnie's Spring Lock suit / animatronic has green eyes. Freddy, well, more like Fredbear, original design, has blue eyes. I'm not sure if Fredbear actually has the same, so he probably has green eyes in his current Fredbear design, similar to Spring Bonnie. But hey, maybe they actually wait. Fredbear, Freddy Bear, Freddy Fazbear. Maybe when Freddy Fazbear and his friends were created, Freddy Fazbear used the original design of Fredbear, which was the brown fur with the black hat and bow tie.
Would have had to have been created after the spring locks already existed, meaning they could be completely different designs compared to the ones at Fredbear's, and they actually are. See, in the Stage 01 minigame from FNAF 3, we see Fredbear with a brown hat and a black bow tie. There's two ways to interpret this. You could either say that this is Golden Freddy, as Golden Freddy in the Silver Eyes graphic novel has a brown hat, which is a bit confusing and unnecessary. But the other option is that because the background of the minigame was black, Scott had to change the color. At least at Freddy's, considering we're saving the spirit who possesses Foxy, who dies at Freddy's, and that means that Stage 01 Fredbear is the one to become Golden Freddy. The Spring Bonnie from Freddy's, on the other hand, is the one who becomes Springtrap. How do we know that? Because the one from Fredbear's is the one who is designed more like Glitch Trap.
Yes.
Take a look at the supply closet from FNAF 4. On the shelf, we see the head of Spring Bonnie, and it's designed very similarly to Glitch Trap. Glitch Trap was the original Spring Bonnie, and when the Springlock suits were created, Spring Bonnie kept the same basic design, unlike Fredbear, who changed colors and passed his design along to someone else. I also think that the Fredbear's Family Diner Spring Bonnie suit is the same one that Afton used to repair himself after the FNAF 3 fire, as the design of
Yes, that
Trap
would
is
make
very
sense.
similar to Glitch Trap and the Fredbear's Spring Bonnie. The only question left here is where Fredbear and Spring Bonnie went after Fredbear shut down. Were they just...
First off, the Spring Bonnie animatronic suit has green eyes. Meanwhile, the Spring Bonnie on the poster has purple eyes, similar to Glitch Trap.
left in Fredbear's Family Diner to rot? Maybe, but if FNAF 6 is Fredbear's, I feel like they would have been found and mentioned in the Tales from the Pizzaplex epilogues if that was the case. It's very possible that Afton just stuffed them into Circus Baby's entertainment and rental, away in one of the spare rooms, and after FNAF 3, William Afton returned to retrieve Spring Bonnie and fix himself. But we'll go a bit more in-depth on that in the next theory, which will be all about FNAF VR. Interestingly enough, Steelwool has gone on record saying that they would love to make a Fredbear's Family Diner game, so that could be what they work on after Help Wanted 2 comes out.
And if they do, then I'm okay with it, because honestly, I wouldn't mind. Mostly due to the fact that people thought that they were going to get a second DLC of Security Breach when in reality we're already going to have Help Wanted 2 come out in the winter, so that a second DLC, no, one is already enough. But then again, Mortal Kombat 11 had 2 DLCs, kind of. It's not really that important. Well, what is important, if they do make a Never game after Help Wanted, I don't mind. But then again, still now, sometimes they take a long time. And it, triggers people. Actually, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't have said that. I tried to explain this, but, basically, the mascot costumes for Fredbear's Family Diner back in the 70s were the first ever, costumes, or close enough to actual mascots come to life. Whatever you want to call it. But I now find it interesting that maybe Freddy Fazbear took Fredbear's original design, which was, the brown fur, probably even the blue eyes, the black bow tie and top hat. Actually, even with there was something about the fabric suits being made for the animatronic inner the fabric costumes were used for the animatronics to make their skins. And that actually makes sense, because when I talked about a theory involving how Foxy became the way he was in FNAF 1, after he was fixed after FNAF 2, it's probably because the fabric got torn off. For some reason, it just gotten really rusty and fell apart by itself, because Fritz's blood or something else entirely got to the suit and decided to fall apart, which actually might make sense. Oh, and by the way, if you know about the fan game Five Nights at Juniors, or, well, maybe Juniors, I can't remember, but all I know is that the time of the game takes place in 1982, and I already discovered that the time period might have been a reference to one of the original concept game files that had FNAF 4 take place either in 1987 or 1982. 1982 being the earliest time that FNAF universe might have took place in. But nope, FNAF 4 takes place in 1983. Well, the minigames. Meanwhile, the FNAF 4 gameplay takes place in the 90s. And as for the ghost child being guessed to be Cassidy, no, I can already tell from the silhouette that it's supposed to be Charlie / Charlotte. Because even with the silhouette, Charlotte was the first victim from Afton's murder spree, and that she was probably taking revenge on the crime child because his father murdered her at Fredbear's, which actually makes more sense than having Cassidy as the ghost child, because why would she be killed in 1982 when she was killed in 1985? That doesn't make sense. I'm going to explain something else in the next video. That's all. Bye.